its meeting to order. Is there any public comment? Hearing none. Next on the agenda is County Growth Trends Annual Update, and that will be done by Kirk and Jeff. Gentlemen.
Okay, well, thanks for the time today. We do our annual building permit survey with the county planning department, so we look at growth trends from a commercial industrial standpoint and residential standpoint. So we have our 16 numbers in, did some analysis on them. So we just wanted to quickly walk through some of those findings with you, answer any questions you may have. So Jeff's our guru, put all this together. So
Go ahead.
yeah, turn it over to Jeff.
Okay, if you look over at the screen here, this is the residential growth trends, and the red line, red line is the proposed residences or dwellings that we see with plans coming in through our office. The green line is the building permits that we see, and we get those from the building permit survey every year with the municipalities. So it's a comparison of the two, but if you notice, it starts from 2000 here and it goes out to 2016. And we'll start with the building permits first here, the green line. It's generally, say, fairly stable until about 2008. During the recession, it drops. Okay, and it stays in that low level all the way until you start to see it starting to increase a little bit now in the last 2 to 3 years. It's been going up generally, maybe about 10 to 20% each year. The red line is showing proposed plans we received and the number of units proposed. And you can see in the mid-2000s there, very high, up to 3,000 we had at one point, and then at 2008 it dropped with the market and went down. And if you notice the comparison between the two lines there, from about 2008 to about 2014, the building permits are more than what the proposed dwellings are. Okay, so they're actually issuing more permits than proposed dwellings we've been reviewing, and that's basically because before that in the 2005 time frame here, those are being developed now sort of through the pipeline here with the permits. Okay, in 2015 is where it started to change. 2015 here with the proposed dwellings actually increased above what the permits were. Okay, so we're actually getting more proposed dwellings than actually permits being issued for the first time since 2007. Okay, and what happened after that dramatic increase from last year happened? We had an increase in proposed dwellings of about 100%, a little more than 100%. It went from 1,000 proposed units to over 2,000 in that 1 year. So what that shows me is a dramatic more confidence in the housing market we've seen. And if you want to, I guess, forecast a little bit beyond that, what we've seen so far this year, it is actually tapering off a little bit. It's not as dramatic as an increase as we saw in 2016, so far in 2017. Through May of this year, we have received a good number, but it's not as much as we did in 2016. To give you an example, in 2016, at this time, in May, we had over 1,000 units proposed by this time in 2016. In 2017, so far, we've had about 700 so far. So it's been a decrease, about 300 units or so, comparative to last year. So I don't see, if you want to progress that a little further into the future, next year being a dramatic an increase as you saw this last year. I still see maybe it'll start leveling off a little bit.
You still see there being
Yeah, I think the red line will continue to stay above, yes, the green line, and exactly how far, that's one of those things, I don't know if I want to see it go as far up as he did before, because the market just couldn't handle it. That's when it started to drop. But if you notice, it's up that high, it's at a level that it was comparative to before the recession. So it looks like we moved out of it.
Jeff, a lot of that's just timing, right, with the permits, because, correct me if I'm wrong, what you have here in the red line is proposed residential units. Are these plans that have been approved and recorded, or just plans that have been approved?
Yeah, let me clarify that. Those are final plans that have been reviewed by our office. Okay, so they're not finally approved at the level, but they were last year, so most of those are approved at the local level. Yeah, but they're final.
If you go back to 2005, more than 10 years ago now, and you saw all of those, building proposed units come in, right? Are we still dealing with the backlog? And that one of the questions I had.
Believe it or not, yes.
Oh, yeah.
We are still, there are
Yeah,
still
they-
phases of those that are being developed.
I don't know whether we've ever done an analysis of this. I'm just curious as to some of the new proposals that are coming in. Are they reconfigurations of things that may have been proposed, 10 years ago? In other words, how long? Yeah, and
Like a revision of an old one.
right, and how long are the building permits good for? I mean, is there a time limit on those? I can't remember.
I know approval of plans is 5 years, but a building permit, I'm not sure if there is a time limit on that. It can be built and then the inspector has to go out and make sure that it complies, but
Okay.
there's a time limit on this. But what your question is, these that you're seeing here now, these are new. Meaning they're final plans, so they weren't counted back there in the high point there. So this new proposals that you're seeing, those are new.
So, just to sort of take it one step further, so say back in 2006, somebody came to y'all with plans for this that you processed, yet they never went to build, okay? And let's say maybe they sold, maybe say they went bankrupt, they sold off the property, now the same property, different owner, maybe instead of building, attached townhouses, they're thinking about doing, I don't know, small, single, unattached homes, all but on the same property. Do you get that kind of thing where basically it's overwinding the walls?
Or like changing the ownership to something else. Yes, it did happen.
There's some of that.
Not a lot, but it did. Yeah, there was a little bit of that. Yeah.
Jeff, your numbers, when you get them, so I know many residential plans are in phases. And I know, hate to keep talking about Silver Spring, but we have the Peninsula development.
Oh, sure.
Just, it's under final phase, and that plan was developed before I got in office 10 years ago. Do you count the total numbers or just
I count the number of that phase.
of just the phase?
Of that phase.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
and that's good.
Yeah, so it's just that phase, so I did that so not recounting double the numbers.
No,
we
it's
had.
good.
Yeah, so.
Let's hope this week.
Yeah.
Jeff, do you have over time a conversion rate in terms of, out of every one proposed residential unit, how many you actually convert into a building permit? Is it close to 1-to-1? Clearly, there's a time lag.
That I don't have, I'm not sure.
Yes. And I won't hold you to it.
I know in the past, let's say it was close because up until for the last, since 2010, going forward to 2014, you notice they're very close, the lines are close there. So I think what was being proposed, for the most part, was being built. And then because of more permits, some of those being built were from before. So I think that's pretty close. Now with this going up so dramatically here in this last year, I'd say, you can almost look back to back in 2005, 6, and 7, and say not all those were built until, maybe these won't be built for 10 years out, depending on how it.
And how this translates is if you look, I just went over with finance, but the 18 budget proposal is going to start to look very preliminarily. And one of the things, clearly we're dependent on property tax revenues for most of our revenue. And in trying to determine how our revenue stream is going to go, they look at the green line, the permits. And I just want to make sure that in case, let's just say, someday somebody went a little bit cuckoo and said, no, we should look at the red line for proposed units, that's a better predictor of our property tax income. I would have to say that they probably need a straitjacket. I kind of think that in terms of, and no one's saying the onus is on your model to predict it, but we do use that as a predictor of property tax revenue. The more conservative approach would be to look at the permits.
Yeah. Yeah, because you can see how that red line really fluctuates. Of that too, the proposed development is mostly multifamily townhouse, which we've been seeing in the last 3 years. That has been most, 2 years ago, it was 75% of that was multifamily and townhouse. Last year was about 70% of the proposed was that.
As compared to single.
As opposed to single family, yeah. This year, so far, it's about the same, about 70% so far has come in as multifamily or townhouse, what we see.
One of the big concerns is affordable housing as the county grows. It's not just wealthy people that are coming to the county. In fact, it's many people with fixed incomes, retirees, but also people coming over from Susquehanna Township. So I know the Housing and Redevelopment Authority is very concerned about our stock of affordable housing. If more multifamily units are being built, that's probably a positive sign.
Yeah.
And it just drives the school districts crazy,
Yes.
because, with more of the multifamily, it can throw your projections relative to growth off in terms of school district population and facilities and that. And it looks as though, I think, everything I'm hearing is Cumberland Valley is the fastest growing school district, I guess, in the county. That's because that's all that's filling. Silver Spring Township.
Well, you see, Silver Spring and Hampton were the two big ones.
Yeah.
They have been in the last several years, and they still are. Hampton had the most proposed units. Silver Spring had the most building permits issued.
One of the dark horses, everybody talks about Newville as being poised on the cusp of taking off in terms of development. Have you seen that?
See what, I'm sorry, what's it?
Newville.
Oh, Newville?
Yeah, the Newville area.
Not as far as dwelling units are concerned, I haven't seen that. Now, industrially, maybe that corridor going on 233, that is a sort of a growth area, and so we're seeing development there, but more of a commercial and industrial nature than residential.
Shippensburg areas, if you look at what we call the Big Eight, they're bullet number 6, those 8 municipalities have covered all the growth of proposed residential units and permits. The anomaly in their Southampton Township, everything else is eastern Cumberland County, throw Southampton in there. So a lot of the Southampton units we've seen were back in that 2004, 2005 time period. You see this big speculation period where everybody was in the residential market. So it'll be interesting to see how that builds out over time. You're where you live, Larry, down in Deerfield, that whole area, there's a lot of that stuff that's out there. Whether or not it comes to fruition based upon the market elsewhere in the county, the Silver Spring market, some of those other areas in eastern part of the county are real hot. That's where people really want to be. Nothing against Southampton. They seem to be the preferential markets right now for schools and other reasons.
Well, Let me ask you about Southampton. I mean, in terms of rate of growth, they're the fastest growing municipality in the county, right? Southampton?
As far as number of, like, units?
Yeah.
No, the fastest is Hampton Silver Spring.
Okay. Okay.
Well, what's the metric that's being applied to Southampton that makes that one of the fastest growth?
Maybe percentage-wise, I know that, based on what they had before, and how they're.
Okay.
Okay, but they're starting with a low base number.
Yes.
again,
Right.
Right.
But the growth rate is so high, but in terms of absolute numbers, how do they stack up?
Absolute numbers, they're about number 4 or 5.
Okay, all right.
So that's not too
So
bad.
it's the rate of growth, you know, compared to what they were, not necessarily total numbers in Southampton.
But your BEA is based on absolute numbers? Yeah, so even though, yes, Southampton's gonna have a bloated, percentage increase because it's starting from a low base, but it's the 4th highest in terms of actual count. So that is, don't.
Upper Island has a lot of room to grow too, don't they?
Yeah, Upper Island, Lower Island are both coming up quite a bit with their development. That new development in Lower Island Township, Arconia, down there south of the Turnpike. We've seen a lot of plans in for that within the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Jump to.
Yeah, let me go ahead and jump over to that's. There we go. This one is not as, the comparable is not as close as you saw in the residential between commercial and industrial. Again, the red is what we've received in the office for plan review. The green is the permits that were issued. And you can see back in 2000, we had a lot of proposals being submitted. You can see the green line. I would characterize it being sort of stable, sort of stabilizing. You see the decline during the 2008 recession, again, in both the proposed and the permits being issued, dropping down there to, I guess, the low is, gosh, around 2010, 2009 and 10. It's a low point in it. But what you notice is that after 2010, going up to 2011, 12, and 2012, the green line, the permits being issued is higher than what is being proposed that we've seen. And the reason for that, which I believe, is that the green line is what we're seeing is more redevelopment going on than in the past. In the past, you saw back in the early 2000s more, I think, greenfield development. And as you get down to 2012 and 14, 15, and 16, that line comes up, and that's because redevelopment, when a plan or a business is redeveloped, a permit is issued for it, but we do not see a plan in our office for that. So we do not see that plan. That red line is not reflected in that.
Okay, so that's, in other words, the higher numbers on the permits issued for commercial is not necessarily new land being developed.
Correct. A lot of that, what we've seen in the last 3 years is Carlisle and Mechanicsburg, the boroughs. They're actually submitting a lot of commercial and industrial permits to us. And for instance, this last year in 2016, Carlisle submitted over 20 commercial permits. And I looked at that and I thought, this can't be right. Are there 20 new establishments, commercial? So I called them up to double check that number and said, are these new? Or are you just giving a permit for redoing their air conditioning or something? And they said, no, each one of these are new. These are new developments that are coming.
Is that tied in any way to the, what do you call it, the new project?
IAC.
Oh,
No, 'cause, there's been no permits issued out there, so we see, existing locations, so.
But that's coming.
It is, you're right, so you'll see it.
So, yeah.
See a spike for
We'll see
that.
that coming up then. So we've seen plans with those two.
So Jeff, let's say in Silver Spring Square, ABC company, they close up shop and XYZ company moves in the same building. That counts as an additional.
What's first, in
Permit.
Silver Springs?
Any company, any building, let's say a mall, a strip mall, you got a company there, they go out of business,
Right.
another company replaces it, so another permit's issued.
Correct.
All right.
We will see a permit, but not
All right.
the proposed plan.
Got it.
So,
Green, yes, red, no.
Green, yes, red, no.
that's like,
That's
the only way I can do it.
No, that's, okay.
yeah, so,
Sorry, I'm a little slow.
No. So I think at some point you should give Rachel a quick crash course in that. Is it called AIC? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, IAC.
IAC, you know. It's a big deal.
Yeah, and Pearl's moving forward, I think. I know the redevelopment authorities trying to get all those pieces in place with the workforce housing. It's going to be going over there. That's moving pretty fast.
Again, we kind of link between the two. I think housing is an issue we are looking at with our comprehensive plan update. We're relying a lot on the Housing Redevelopment Authority to look at their policies and programs. We did our background chapter though, and we're looking at our rents, and there's deficiency of certain multifamily unit size, and then when you see that deficiency, the contract rents go up. So we did recognize we need more multifamily units in the county. And what I've seen just from our experience in working with a lot of our municipalities, sometimes there's a stigma attached to multifamily. A lot of times people look at multifamily and say, well, that's Section 8 housing, it's low income. A lot of this is not, and even some of that other workforce housing that's out there, in many cases, very high quality. I mean, there's Shepherd's Crossing in Hampton Township, beautiful development. I mean, so I think one of the things we want to do with work with the Housing Authority, Redevelopment Authority, is we work with our municipalities so that they understand this information and understand what multifamily really means, and that there is need for it. Because we have seen municipalities that don't want to zone for it, and there's still demand. So
Wasn't that why Hampton was pounding on that other issue and didn't want to cooperate because they were annoyed with that development and the fact that it had mixed housing and it was sort of against their.
Yeah, it's a beautiful development.
yeah, it is built now, yeah.
and it's,
And then you have, I mean, I hate to keep going back there, this is on kind of Silver Spring, but they actually created that village, what's it called?
Walden.
Walden, yeah.
Oh,
I mean, it's,
that's a real
you know, that-
different. Yeah.
that's not the old, cookie cutter, half a lot, and everybody, lives in a cul-de-sac. I mean, that is like, I think the wave of the future. And the reason I say that is also because the millennials, okay, they don't necessarily want to, live in these humongous houses, with taking care of all the grass and everything. They want to be close to things.
Right.
So, I think there's a change in the attitude based on, younger families. And they don't want to put their life savings into the house. I mean, they want to be able to do things. They want to be able to, or we don't want to put it all into the home.
Yeah, that type of development, Walden, you didn't see much of that, I'd say 10, 15 years ago. Now, many of the municipalities have those ordinances and those regulations in it to allow those types of developments to occur.
Yeah. So at the Capital Region Council of Governments meeting on Monday evening, our friends from Tri-County were there, and they gave a presentation relative to growth in the three counties. And what I did take away from that is their commentary that, and according to their projections, that between now and 2040, 67% of the growth in the three counties, according to them, is going to occur in Cumberland County. And what I was kind of interested in, which I didn't quite understand, is they're projecting, or they were suggesting that Perry County essentially growth is going to remain relatively flat. And I didn't understand, or I don't know why that would be necessarily. Do you guys have any thoughts on that? Oh, and then they also talked about how the city is going to, Harrisburg is going to continue to lose population. And that, but Dauphin County is going to grow at a much slower rate than Cumberland County. So do you have any thoughts on why you would not see more growth in Perry County?
It's just really not, it's a rural county, and I'm not sure there's any factors that would drive it in any different direction. You lack the infrastructure. Yeah, it's just not, a lot going for it that would create growth. Not that it's not a great place to live. I mean, I'm sure the people who live there love it, and I love it when I go through there, but it's, when you compare it to Cumberland and Dauphin, I mean, I think too, when we look back at that regional planning model, are we equally yoked with our partners? In that case, we weren't. You have Dauphin and Cumberland County that are, miles ahead in terms of planning, and you have Perry County that's really different than its makeup.
Okay.
They went through several scenarios to do that, and one of them was zoning they looked at, and public infrastructure. And Perry County doesn't have much zoning, and they don't have much infrastructure either, so it's
Well, they really hoped that when they put up that first traffic light, that it would be an engine for economic growth. But it just didn't materialize.
Well, it might also be, again, some of what I was mentioning here in terms of where younger families want to live.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, the changing demographics. I mean, when you look at if you're comparing Cumberland County and Dauphin County, or comparing Perry County and Cumberland County in our preparedness to accept a changing demographic. For us, we have a lot of different communities, smaller lots, a lot more amenities than what Perry County does. I mean, if you're looking at Perry County, you're largely looking at large lot, single-family residential homes, and if that's not in demand, then I think the market shifts elsewhere. Where it's coming to Cumberland, it's coming to Dauphin County. Had a meeting this morning with the West Shore Chamber of Commerce, some of their people. I think they're looking at revitalization efforts that are happening in West Shore. And that's a lot of what we're discussing with Canton, Orleansburg, Lemoyne, New Cumberland, West Fairview, East Pennsburg. There's so much energy going on right now, revitalization in West Shore, that when we get that done right, that's really going to be a powerful attractant for people to live and work in that area.
And I understand that, May 27th, I found this out at the Emergency Service Action Panel meeting. On May 27th, 7 o'clock in the morning, the old Senate Plaza, I call it the White Elephant, which has been empty for some times, is going to be imploded.
Yeah.
Okay. But I understand what's going in there is they're talking about some retail. They're talking about a Starbucks. Okay. So all those kind of like amenities that are going to attract more people. And so that's a redevelop. That's a huge redevelopment project. And yeah, they're talking about riverfront development now in West Fairview. So I mean, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how that all shakes out over the next 10, 15, 20 years. West Fairview. I mean, that's been an older community, but there's a lot of opportunity there. West Fairview.
You guys have anything else you want to present?
That's all we have.
Gary, any questions?
No, not at this point, all interesting stuff.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you guys. Good stuff. Any other business to be brought in front of the Finance Committee? Hearing none, is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
For adjournment. Gary?